world stands together in the fight against COVID-19. As cases surge daily, many are confused on when the fight will take the right trajectory. Numerous vaccine candidates have brought hopes of success against the fight, but turns out the credibility of these vaccines cannot be trusted just yet. Vaccine development is a complex process. Most have taken many decades, but the pandemic created the need for building one in a matter of months. They did. There is a lot that is still unknown. Pfizer has potential allergic reactions. The company Pfizer has warned people with allergies to not take its COVID-19 vaccine. It seems the frontrunner has issues. To everyone's surprise, this warning has not stopped many countries from using the Pfizer vaccine. US federal officials, the military, health workers are already undergoing the practice runs. The intense challenge lies in the efficacy of these so-called potential vaccines. Vaccination induces immunity by causing the recipient's immune system to react to antigens contained in the vaccine. Local and systematic reactions such as pain or fever can occur as part of the immune response. Experts say that vaccine reaction is an individual's response to the inherent properties of the vaccine, even when the vaccine has been prepared, handled, and administered correctly. A successful vaccine keeps even minor reactions to a minimum while producing the best possible immune response. The frequency of the vaccine reaction will be observed and compared to vaccines for other diseases. Reactions typically occur within a day or two of immunization, except for rash reactions after the measles vaccine, which can arise from up to 6 to 12 days after immunization and persist for 1 to a few days. 95 or 98% efficacy is a good start, but the world needs a vaccine with a 100% efficacy. Failed vaccine recipients can become carriers, and that in itself can pose great challenges. The situation of allergic reactions can still be transformed into a win-win situation. We will have to stand by and wait for doctors, scientists, and vaccine scientists work in the background towards walking on a journey far away from the COVID-19 pandemic. Bureau Report, Democracy News Live, New Delhi. Good evening and welcome to It Matters on Democracy News Live. We've been following the vaccine development and those challenges right from the very beginning. Welcome to part 5 of the vaccine development and the vaccine series. The challenge obviously came after we've seen two major reactions. First of all, there was a little bit of a failure with the Oxford vaccine. The second one came after some nurses reported a fair amount of challenges and reactions because of the Pfizer vaccine. But it's not unusual to have reactions to vaccines. That's the reality. But they didn't expect the way the reactions were. And obviously, this development of this vaccine's been at a really solid pace. It's been so quick that nothing in the world before has happened so quickly. So challenges had to exist, but at the same time, the world's being careful. We, in the earlier 4 parts, if you watch it, you will see that we discussed, and the people here on the panel had also kind of praised us, that a good vaccine will possibly only be available by June, and a decent one finally possibly available only by October. So certainly we knew about it. At the same time, many people have to get on with their lives, and the vaccine, practice runs need to begin, and people need to taking it. So we are here to discuss what's going on, what's happening, where we are globally in the fight against the pandemic, against COVID-19 virus, and how the vaccine development and immunization is going to go on. So today on the show is Dr. Pavitra Venkat Gopalan. She's a PhD in coronavirus studies. Again, the coronavirus studies was a different coronavirus study. It's not this COVID-19 coronavirus. She's an expert in molecular biology of the virus. Dr. Pavitra is the director of 2 labs, Care Health in Chennai and Molecular Solutions in Bangalore. Also joining us, Dr. Jerome Kim. He's the Managing Director and Director General of International Vaccine Institute. He's been on our shows earlier and obviously has given, praised us very well of where the world is in the fight against the vaccine and with the vaccine against the virus. Apologies. Also joining us, Dr. Deborah L. Merkley. She's the MD, FACP. She's an emergency medicine attending physician at Rochester Regional Health. She's been working there since 1998. Dr. Girish Tyagi, he's the Secretary, Delhi Medical Council. Let me first begin by bringing in Dr. Pavitra Venkatgopalan. Dr. Pavitra, tell me the reactions that you've seen. Are these expected when a vaccine goes to market and people begin taking it, and especially when people have not been alerted that these reactions may exist?
The scariest side effect of a vaccine is that the person can get an infection from that vaccine. So this is the scariest reaction. However, the development of this vaccine itself negates that possibility. So the scariest thing that can happen from a vaccine cannot happen with this vaccine. So there is your best case scenario. Now, this vaccine, especially the Pfizer vaccine, has removed almost all unwanted parts of a vaccine that could cause side effects, other extraneous proteins, different additives, and things like that. This vaccine only has the mRNA carried in a lipid molecule. It's a technical term, I apologize for that, but that's the simplest way you can deliver this vaccine to the body. And in order to stabilize this, a small compound called PEG that is being used. It's actually a very common compound, it's antifreeze, but in some people it can trigger allergies. Obviously, this vaccine has been tested on about 30 something thousand people, and it has not shown a serious side effect so far. However, that's not to say that it might not show up when we start vaccinating more number of people. And that's why the warning for people that have allergies has been given out. So, in my opinion, this is not unexpected, and this is one of the lowest possible side effects that we can get without trivializing the experience of the person that had the allergic reaction.
Sure, no, absolutely. And we've in our earlier discussion, Dr. Pavitra, you had also talked about many in the beginning had been accusing China of making this man-made virus, as they called it, but you had obviously dispelled it and said this is very much how a virus comes into being. It's not a man-made virus, and we made that point very early on. Obviously, we didn't want to trivialize the whole idea of the coronavirus that was spreading around the world, and in order not to spread the disinformation, we made sure that we put that word out. Let me bring in Dr. Jerome Kim here. Dr. Jerome Kim, you've kind of last time when we spoke, you discussed how large a challenge it is to be able to vaccinate the world. By 2023, 2024, we're looking at vaccinating the world, and obviously a very tough process of how the vaccine is going to get delivered and the chain it needs. Explain to me, as you've seen the vaccine now for the first time being administered to public or frontline workers again, so let's call it the first phase of the vaccine. Are you surprised at the reactions and the allergies that the Pfizer vaccine threw out?
So anaphylactic reactions are a complication of almost any injection, including vaccines. They are rare complications. We know that as was mentioned previously, that this RNA vaccine is wrapped in a fatty coat, and there are constituents in that coat that could potentially induce a severe allergic reaction. In fact, during the study, there was one person who received the vaccine who had a similar type reaction. And when you think that maybe 400,000 people or more have been vaccinated, and you look at the number of side effects, yes, it occurs. Yes, it's serious. But the protocols that exist for people to be treated in case this happens seem to prevent a very bad consequence from occurring. So they were in the clinic, they were observed, and they were appropriately treated. So the existing precautions that were taken by the physicians and nurses in the clinic seem to be adequate to take care of this problem.
Let me bring in Dr. Deborah here. Dr. Deborah, you've seen, now it's being administered in the United States as well. We've seen the first first injections rolling out. Explain to me, are people worried when they take this vaccine? Are people scared, or what is the mood on the ground there in the United States?
It's varied. I personally was very excited to get my vaccine. I received it last week. There's some people in the hospital who haven't gotten it yet, and they're actually upset that they haven't received it. It's, but obviously people are scared, and it's a new vaccine that people haven't heard about yet. So obviously people are worried about that. I personally would be much more worried about a COVID infection than the vaccine. I think the data that has come out of the studies from the Pfizer vaccine has shown how safe it is. But there are people who are scared, and there are people who are just worried about vaccines in general, which is somewhat unfounded. Um, but there is that feeling from people in certain communities or certain people who just don't believe in vaccines in general, which is a problem. Vaccines have been shown to be safe and to stop all sorts of diseases that used to be highly prevalent and we just don't see anymore.
No, Dr. Deborah Curley, what an important point you're making there. And I was traveling last week. I met multiple people, very well educated people, who said, we aren't going to be taking this vaccine just yet. We're going to wait it out. We're going to see what the reactions are. And obviously, as you say, one of the biggest things to be scared about is you actually getting the infection by getting the vaccine. And it's a matter of time, I guess. You Most of the reactions happen in the first 2 days of taking the vaccine. But again, it's a new virus. It's a lot of new studies. But I know, people who've developed it, people who are in this business of science, understand that that's not such a possibility. They are going to be that it's not going to be something that's going to be spreading the virus. So that's a big uh, something that people are going to be very satisfied about when they hear that you yourself as a doctor have taken it, and you're very you don't have any of those reactions, and you feel very confident on taking it. Let me bring in Dr. Tyagi, if still there. Dr. Tyagi, when
Yes.
you look at the vaccine now being administered in different parts of the world, and here we have Dr. Deborah who's already taken the vaccine. Explain to me, what is Delhi Medical Council's perspective? And I know India is going to be a difficult task because of the whole cold chain. Some of these vaccines will never be able to make their way into India because of the cold chain that's required to sustain these vaccines. Explain to me, from the Delhi Medical Council's perspective, where is the strategy? What's going to happen?
Yeah, Delhi Medical Council, as Delhi government has preparing a data for that vaccine to be distributed amongst the doctors, and Delhi Medical Council has asked all the practitioners in Delhi, whether in the private sector, whether in the nursing home, whether in the government sector, and we have sent the data to Delhi government so that whenever the vaccine is being available, it is being prioritized. Of course, as Delhi has decided to first give the vaccine to the healthcare workers, then to the other members. So we have provided them the list, and of course, the Indian, as you already told, that problem in India will be the distribution, and that of course transportation, and of course the that keep that cold chain at for the vaccine, and distribution
Are
of
you
course will be
worried?
a
Are you worried
yeah.
that Are you worried that India may not be able to deliver these vaccines which are coming out first, because the one which obviously can travel at 2 to 8 degrees is a possibility, but at minus 70 degrees for a large period of time, to be able for it to come into India and then travel, it may not even be possible.
No, no. India is working after Dr. Harshvardhan, who is himself is a health minister at the center, and we working on the polio eradication of the polio from the India, and we are hopeful that under his leadership, the problem will be solved.
All right. Let me go back to Dr. Pavitra. Dr. Pavitra, uh, you know the challenges around, the system around how the vaccine has to travel, and it's going to be a very large number. Are you worried that delivery of the vaccine is going to take much longer, and then vaccination at the temperatures we've been talking about? Obviously, the very very detailed protocol around the travel of the vaccine and how many days it can stay out in the 2 to 8 degrees. Are you worried about it?
A little, but that being said, we don't have to keep the vaccine at minus 80 degrees until just the minute before you're getting jabbed. So I know this is what happens in the UK, where when the vaccine reaches from Germany to London port, it's already defrosted. And then it reaches different hubs in about 24 hours, and they have to use it within 3 days. Based on this understanding of how things are happening in the UK, I think the larger cities which have direct flight access to Germany from where the vaccine is coming from will be able to distribute the vaccine to about 1,000 people in 2 or 3 days in each hub without losing the efficacy of the vaccine itself, because it can stand gradually coming up to room temperature for about 2 days. And once it does, then we have to use it in 3 days. So this is still not a terrible news where we have to keep it at minus 80 at every public health center. We can still manage to do it with our existing cold chain systems, at least in the cities that are directly connected by international airports.
That's very good news, because that's certainly been one of the worry areas on how it'll be delivered. Also, there are two parts in 2 doses. Obviously, the first dose has to be given, and then the second dose of the same vaccine has to be given. First the half dose and then a full dose. So certainly one of those challenge areas. Dr. Kim, explain to me, when you see these reactions, and these are the initial first reactions we are getting, is it possible that this reaction may just be the start? Could it exasperate? Could it get worse? Are there any blind spots when it comes down to this vaccine or any other vaccine which comes?
No, that's a very good question. People who've had a very severe reaction to this vaccine would be contraindicated. It would be a contraindication to give them another dose. But one of the things about the RNA vaccines, and this applies to the Moderna vaccine as well, is that the first dose is better tolerated than the second dose. So that although still not severe, the number of people who report moderate side effects goes up between the first and second dose. It raises actually an important question about a third dose. If we need to give people a booster dose 6 months, 12 months, 2 years later, will the third dose be associated with even worse side effects? So there are some unanswered questions, but it seems that at least for the two-month period of follow-up that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have had, that they still appear to be very safe.
I have a question. I may go back to Dr. Pavitra for this. Dr. Pavitra, each of these vaccines has been made with different technology. Correct me if I'm wrong. My sense is one has taken the RNA, the other one's taken another way of doing it. Now, what's the difference for somebody who wants to take this vaccine? Which one would they go for? How would they decide which one to go for? Explain to me the difference between them.
Vaccines can be developed in any number of ways. One of the traditional ways of developing a vaccine is inactivating the virus. What happens is you still have the virus, you inactivate it somehow so that it can cause an immune reaction, but it will actually not cause the infection itself. That is still one of the most effective ways of immunizing. We still use some of that technology. And the next method is where you remove a lot of the surrounding proteins in the virus and only administer the protein that can be recognized by the body for vaccination. That is the second level of safety. That's the next higher level. The third higher level of safety, where first you protect the patient most, is the mRNA technology, because let's remember the goal of vaccination is that a person does not get the infection. So as you come away from each of these steps, you're actually increasing patient safety rather than exposing them to something as severe as the infection itself. So whatever side effect that we are seeing with this this vaccine is still far better than the virus itself. As for which vaccine you would have to choose, have we ever thought about which vaccine and how we are getting vaccinated before? We're always told, hey, you take your flu vaccine. We don't sit and ask who makes it, how does it come? Because there is an established system in place, and the people that are developing, distributing, approving them know what they are doing, and their intention is absolutely to ensure patient safety. Nobody is out there making a vaccine to ensure someone gets hurt.
That's a very good point, Dr. Pavitra. Let me go to Dr. Deborah. Dr. Deborah, by when do you think the US will be able to vaccinate through? How long do you think the whole process is going to be? We were discussing in India, for example, it's going to be as much as 2023, 2024 by the time everybody is vaccinated. How long is the cycle for the US? You may not be able to answer that question right off the bat, I understand. But, give us a sense of time and give us the sense of by when do we think we will begin opening the economy again? Based on that, so just to get a sense, I don't know.
Yeah, right now it looks like the estimates to get everybody vaccinated late summer is I think what they're looking at. I hope it's sooner than that. I think it's going to be hard to open up the economy without having a significant number of or proportion of the society vaccinated, because it's just such a terrible infectious disease. We are hoping to at least get the front line workers vaccinated, within the next few months, and nursing home residents vaccinated in that time, to at least get the most vulnerable people in society vaccinated sooner.
Dr. Tyagi, if you can give me a sense in terms of when do you think India will be able to administer its first vaccine, and by when is India planning to finish the vaccination process?
I think in January, the first shot of the vaccine will be given, preferably in the says around the third week or so, and by which time it will be finished, it is very difficult to say, because India is a huge country, and at least to vaccinate 30 crore initially, these 1 crore are care worker, then the frontline around 5 to 6 lakh, then years of age with disease. And of course it does, and let us see. I can't confirm that when it will be finished, but of course government is committed, and under the leadership, and of course we know that capabilities of Dr. Harshvardhan and the central government is, and different state governments are committed to for this, sir.
Sure. Now, I want to move on to one small other incident that has happened, and we've seen that the infection, there's a new strain which has been found in the UK, and the UK obviously has gone for a very strict lockdown since yesterday. Dr. Kim, if there's a new strain, do all these vaccines become ineffective? What happens? Explain to me. Does the whole development process start again, or is it just another shoot and they have to work on the vaccine again? Give us a sense of that.
So that's a very important question, and one that we don't have a complete answer to yet on this UK Christmas virus. It's called B117. But similar to the other viruses that have emerged during the pandemic, there's one called 614G, which spread throughout Europe very quickly. Now it's being replaced. There was a cluster 5 virus that affected mink and people in Denmark and the Netherlands. And then there's this new virus in the UK. It appears to spread more readily. We don't know that. It hasn't actually been confirmed in animal models. The virus itself has been sequenced. We know that it's in other parts of the world as well, in South Africa. And there are a couple of cases of sequence being detected in Asia as well. We think, based on the sequence, that it probably is still sensitive to the vaccine. Coronaviruses are not like HIV or the flu. In fact, they mutate 8 to 10 times less rapidly than influenza. So we're still hoping that these viruses will be sensitive to vaccine-induced immune responses or to the protection the vaccines provide, but that still needs to be formally tested.
Is there, Dr. Pavitra, is there a reason that we have so many of these viruses happening this year, 2020? One would have thought, a virus will come. We found a new one here because of the bat interaction. This virus has happened, but there has been one virus after the other. What is it with 2020?
What is it with 2020 can go on a t-shirt, but the emergence of these kind of mutations is very common, especially when the virus spreads so much and it's so well studied. It just happens. My strong suspicion is this is what happens in a worldwide pandemic, and we just happen to have a lot more information about it now, and that has us questioning a lot of things that we would have taken for granted earlier.
Thank you. Now, so what you're saying, Dr. Pavitra, to get this straight, is that because there is so much of information that exists today, even a small virus becomes this big news, and people start getting extremely careful. But really, it happens constantly all the time. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because the idea is to understand that we don't need to get worried. This is what happens on a yearly basis, and just that at this time, everybody is super sensitive to the idea. Is that what you're saying?
That trivializes a little bit of the fatality this virus has caused. Let me go back and explain that a little more sensitively. Let's look at about 20 years back, 25 years back. Let's say there was a group of people in a certain locality that was falling sick. We would take that for granted. We'd say, oh, something is happening. They'd be given the best of care that's available. But at that point, people weren't traveling as much. Now, with the emergence of COVID-19, which it so happens spreads so rapidly, combined with our lifestyle of traveling everywhere, has become a huge pandemic. While the incidence of new viruses that happen from animals that transmit from animals to humans is relatively common, the spread of this infection worldwide is something that is a combination of the properties of the virus as well as how our lifestyle is right now. So it's not something to be taken for granted. It is something to be aware of and prepare ourselves for such incidents in the future as well. When SARS came out and then when MERS came out, there were studies that simulated that such an airborne infection can come up in the future and become a worldwide pandemic, as this has happened right now. So in the field of infectious disease and transmission, this is not a surprise for everybody. However, for the rest of the world, when we have taken good healthcare so much for granted, seeing this is a serious shock in our own vulnerability.
All right, good. No, thank you very much, because I think it was a really important point to explain for the world to understand. A lot of people have turned around and said that the information all of you provided over the last few months has been very, very useful. People have watched our shows very, very closely. I want to thank you all for joining me for this show today. Dr. Pavitra, Dr. Kim, Dr. Tyagi, Deborah. Dr. Deborah, I really appreciate it, because honestly, understanding where we are in the fight and how we're going to go ahead is going to be an important one. We will continue following the vaccine story, and we'll continue the vaccine series. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Good night and good luck.